Hi everyone, here's the Bookchemist once again, and today I'm reviewing Less by Andrew Sean Greer, the latest winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, congratulations, and a novel that started interesting me only sadly after it won the prize. I started hearing about it because in reviews and articles I kept reading that this was a rare example of a novel that was being discussed seriously and won prizes, even though it was a comic work, a comedy work of laugh-out-loud fiction, which, by the way, it definitely is. More on that in a second. And it puzzled me, because it seems to me that so many of literature's greatest works are actually laugh-out-loud fun. The most underrated masterpiece I can think of is probably Barney's Version by Mordecai Richler. Absolute must read, but of course you can think of stuff such as Ulysses by James Joyce in its way, or Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. It's just one Wallace, not a pack of them. And the strange thing, the obvious thing when it comes to works of comedic works like those that have so many laughable, hilarious moments, is that those types of literary works tend to be backstabbers of the worst variety. Barney's Version in particular made me cry my eyes out. These are works that usually tend to pack vast, huge, very black, very dense bowls and cores at their heart of deep, terrible sadness. Even though they're so laughable, even though they're so fun, they inevitably have a very bitter core. It's that paradox of literature. It's very easy to visualize for me if I think of two works of Italian literature, modern Italian literature, not modern as in from today, but as in from the modern age. I'm talking about the Jerusalem Delivered by Torquato Tasso and Orlando Furioso by Ludovico Ariosto, which is in English is probably something like Orlando the Furious or whatever. That makes it sound as if the book is about knights doing horse battles around the street of Siena, but it's not. Orlando Furioso is a novel, not a novel, it's a work of poetry. Narrative poetry about knights doing weird shit, chasing each other with swords and pining after women and going crazy and going to the moon, and it's full of all these hilarious moments and slapstick comedy and silly shit, but at its heart, very often, it packs a rather bleak message and has a rather negative view on life and on human nature. Jerusalem Delivered, on the other hand, is this very important work of epic poetry about the Crusades and about the very holy Christian knights who liberated Jerusalem from the Moors. And there's so much suffering in that book, and there's people doing the most horrible shit. There's people in there mistakenly murdering the love of their lives because of reasons, and it's some of the scenes in that book as a whole I kind of found it unreadable, to be honest, but some scenes in it are among the most beautiful and saddest in the whole of literature. But at the same time, even all that considered, its final outlook on life, its final view of life, is actually rather positive and rather hopeful at the end of the day. That's inevitable in literature. Literature deals with the ambiguities of life, with the bizarre nature of life as a never-ending question whose answers only give way to more questions, and it's through the closure of its plots and of its character arcs that we find meaning in all of these occurrences. So it's inevitable in a way for all of these genres and attitudes to have within them their opposite, but the weird way when it comes to Less is that Less is a comedy. It's a comic work with no negative core. It's actually a breeze. It's not a cocktail that tastes sweet but makes you drunk in 2 minutes. It's a glass of tonic water on a hot summer afternoon. And that's amazing. Make no mistake, it's great. I want to call it a masterpiece, I'm not sure. I finished it like 2 hours ago. I need to think about it more before I use that word. But it's an amazing work of fiction. It's unbelievable. And the fact that I'm saying that, the fact that the parallel with tonic water makes it feel bland or feeble or weak, is only because I think we have some unconscious basic understanding of literature as it should be about important themes and human suffering and all those things. And that's wrong. Literature can literally be about shit. whatever it wants to be. Very often American literature is about shit. Gravity's Rainbow, the whole of Jonathan Franzen. Anyway, less is but even that, all those things considered, even when you consider that, even when you consider it so light as a read, yeah, it deals with heartbreak, it deals with growing old and with other very important central human questions, but it does so in a very light-hearted way. It is very conscious of the fact that this is a book about a middle-aged white American, privileged up to a certain point, up to many points, that he really has not many rights to be sympathized with, because he is not suffering that much after all. And even there, it doesn't indulge in its own hopelessness. It's not like, oh, look at me, poor me, I'm so privileged, no one can sympathize with me. Not at all. It shrugs and carries on. One laugh after the other, and one incident after the other, and one small needle through your heart after the other, because yes, there is some element of pain here and there, even if it's not that much, even if it's not that painful, they're there. And laughs, the laughs in this book are so abundant and so free. Many of them come from the brilliant narrator of the novel, and from the bizarre way in which this narrator describes the hero of the book, describes this Arthur Less, which is the main character, and talks about him and gives you some recollections and shifts back to past events in his life and then back to the present of the novel. And the narrator is great at picking up threads in the life of Arthur Less and at offering you images and offering you certain phrases and to compare them and contrast them in ways that give way to hilarious results. There's a certain sentence in this book that goes something like higher, no higher, no higher, that it's totally hilarious every time it pops up. You'll see why when you read the novel. And I don't want to say any more about the narrator, which is majestic and original and bizarre and sometimes goes out of its league to give you his or her opinion on certain things of life. I don't want to say any more on the narrator, because discovering this bizarre narrator, making sense of it, it's one of the great pleasures of the novel, and it's one of the genius things in this novel. When you think you've gotten it, when you think, oh, now I see what kind of a novel Less is, which happens toward its end, you didn't know shit, and you realize what you're actually been reading. And that's genius. Once again, it's great. Is it a masterpiece? Yes, I want to say it is a masterpiece. Why not? Yeah, it's a great novel. Now, Less is about this main character, Arthur Less, who is going on a trip around the world for reasons. He is going to New York, and then he is going to visit Morocco and India and Germany and Italy and Japan, not in this order. And as you can see from the book I'm holding in my hand, this is little more than 200 pages. There's really not enough weight in this book for the type of world building that will be required for a novel of this sort that really travels the entire world, to feature that some good world building and to give you a taste of these settings and these places. Germany, actually, Berlin in particular, is the only place that I think the novel does justice to, as in it is very well represented. It gives you an idea of the city. By the way, the chapter in Germany is also by far the most hilarious in the novel. It's probably the strongest in the book, if you ask me. But I'm not saying this to complain. I'm saying this because you should know what you're getting yourself in. This is not a book. If by any chance you read the plot of this book and you imagine a travel book, something like Eat, Pray and Love, which I haven't read, but I imagine it talks about India and Italy in some bizarre foreigner's gaze way. This is nothing of the sort, and it is. What I want to say is that this book focuses entirely on Arthur Less and his problems and his past life as he moves through these countries. And the book never tells you anything about the countries. It always only talks about Arthur Less and about his foreigner's gaze on these places. And at times, the book, that's because the book is focalized through the main character, it almost appears borderline racist when when Less is to accept a prize, a literary prize in Italy. He assumes that the money behind the prize comes from the mafia, basically. When he is in Mexico, he assumes he has to bribe people at the airport in order to leave it sooner. But yeah, that's the good. Once again, it characterizes this guy as an American, and in my experience, as as a European, as an Italian, Americans very often feel like very strange beasts. There's something wrong with their human reactions and with the way they approach the world. And this clash of cultures is once again represented beautifully in the novel. And let me add that that thing I said, that the novel is all about this main character and about his past, makes it sound like the most boring shit possible. It's not. It flows beautifully, it's well written, it's always extremely interesting. Less is a masterpiece of a book. I would recommend it to anyone who is looking for a fun, light, but very, very good read, and very well structured, amazingly well written, hefty in its lack of weight. But let me know what you think of the novel, which I would recommend once more to anyone. Let me know if you had a different experience, if you found it actually quite heartbreakingly sad, if you found it actually bitter at parts, if you had problems coping with the guy's very happy life, or if you found his life, the life of Arthur Less, actually quite tragic. Let me know in the comments below. In a second you're going to find links on my screen to other reviews I filmed in the past, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.